Well, you could probably tell already, I'm pretty excited for Alan Wake 2, and I absolutely love the other entries in the Dark Place story. I mean, I already released an Alan Wake 2 hype up, along with the Remedy Universe video, all the while I was working on yet another Alan Wake 2 video before the game even releases. Now, I will get right down to business. In this video, I will be breaking down the 3 trailers that we have gotten so far, going in the order of the trailer's release. But I am going to be leaving out the certain gameplay first looks that IGN has released, along with all the different interviews that Sam Lake and whoever else have done. I'm going to focus mainly on the 3 big actual trailers, those being the reveal announcement, the first gameplay reveal, and then the Dark Place gameplay trailer. But I feel like this intro has droned on long enough, so without further ado, let's step right into the first Alan Wake 2 trailer. Before we hop into this, as always, if you enjoyed this video, why not hit it with a like? And if anywhere through you want to see more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Getting right to it though, the first trailer we got about a year or two ago was the shortest trailer of the lot, and it really didn't have much to it, but I still have to talk about it a little bit. First, I'm going to describe the monologue that we hear Wake giving throughout the short trailer, then I'll move on to the visual side of things. So, only listening, we hear Wake say that everyone goes to a story with hopes of an answer. I would assume this is alluding to Wake trying to use his stories and manuscripts in hopes of escaping the Dark Place. He then says, it's better to keep your hopes than go looking for the story at all. I would assume this also goes with Wake being trapped in the Dark Place, and all hopes of the story has brought him deeper into madness. Wake continues saying, this is not the story you want it to be. That this story is a monster, and monsters have many faces. Onto the visual side, we first see what could only be a crime scene, a gruesome one at that. The crime scene is obviously in the dark forest of Bright Falls. We see in the distant forest someone standing there, most likely Wake, as the camera slowly zooms in on them. The environment suddenly shifts to a dark and rainy New York. We can't see much other than the city except for some phone booths you can hear ringing and that person still in the distance. Things shift back to Bright Falls again, this time in the streets of the town, all of the Deer Fest decorations still up, and it shifts back to New York. The camera zooms quicker into the person standing in the distance, revealing that it is Alan as he turns around. He is wearing a suit though that is actually quite similar to Mr. Scratch. He looks at the camera and is holding up some kind of Disneyland light-up wand or something, and he mentions monsters having many faces, and when he says that, the screen cuts to a disturbing and bloody Alan. Then the trailer ends. The monsters having many faces I would only assume is Alan, and Alan has many faces, the monster being Scratch, and being the bloody quote-unquote Alan we see at the end. Now that was just the announcement trailer though. Yeah, that was it. And I do apologize for the way I explained this trailer, kind of weird, but it was honestly the easiest way to go through it. But with the shortest trailer aside, let's get into the first actual trailer we got, being the first gameplay reveal trailer. So as I said, this is a longer trailer, so I'll focus more on the bigger points, along with going through the trailer point by point. The trailer opens up with Wake stating that he is still trapped, most likely meaning American Nightmare did not pull him out of the Dark Place. As Wake says this, we then see a group of cult members tying up none other than FBI agent Robert Nightingale. Once tied up, a cultist pulls a blade and does some sort of sacrifice on Nightingale. Wake continues his monologue saying that he writes to escape, and every word is a step further into darkness. I think this goes back to what I said about the last trailer, being that it is better to keep hopes than hunt down the story. I think Wake is saying this as he knows the story is the only way to get the answer to escape, but as he writes, it only brings him further into darkness and madness. The scene changes to Alex Casey and Saga Anderson pulling into Bright Falls, conversing with each other. Casey tells Anderson that he knew this specific case was perfect for her, and it was right up her alley. Cut back to Wake, this time still in the Cauldron Lake cabin, writing on the typewriter. As he writes, he describes the events of the beginning of the trailer, saying that the victim was one of their own, Agent Nightingale. Does this mean that Wake is still writing the events of reality, trying to escape the wretched dark place and dark presence? I don't know, but back to Bright Falls, this time in the streets, we see Deerfest going on, and people walking around the streets, and the Oh Dear Diner in the distance, and things seem lively again. While we see this, Saga is speaking to someone off screen, and it sounds to be an older gentleman. She asks if he knew Nightingale, and the man responds that he was always chasing a writer that came to town. This makes me think that the older man is actually Pat Maine, the radio host, as he was the one on Wake's side until Nightingale came and shot up his studio. We then see Wake again typing away in that dark room. He says, "Someone knew they were there, was playing a game with them," almost definitely referring to Scratch. Then things shift back to Casey and Anderson as they find a manuscript page, Anderson stating that the page is written about them. We then hear Wake say, "We're all trapped in a horror story, and that horror story wanted us dead." And I mean, I don't think I have to explain that one. Cut back to Anderson approaching the very run-down Cauldron Lake General Store, showing some pretty good-looking gameplay. And inside, it looks like some sort of base camp or headquarters was once set up, with tables and gear everywhere. Then, a cultist in what looks like a Deerfest mask busts through the wall, darkness seeping out of them as it's obvious they are one of the Taken. Suddenly back to Wake, this time in New York. Behind him on a wall is graffitied the word "return." He then says there must be something he's forgetting. We see a quick cut to cultists moving down on a place called the Elderwood Palace Lodge. A place we have actually not seen yet, but obviously located in the Elderwood National Forest. Then another thing relating to the last trailer, we see Wake using a phone booth in another short clip, alluding back to that phone booth ringing. Cut to Wake walking through New York, and you see a building with a huge neon sign. Now this is kind of crazy in my opinion, but you will have to let me know what you think in the comments down below. But the only thing I can make it out to be is the Ocean View Hotel, which is interesting, but obviously different than the Ocean View Motel and Casino that the FBC found in Montana. The scene then shifts to Anderson fighting some crazy, straight, grisly mountain folk with the same techniques as the original Alan Wake game. Suddenly back to Wake in New York, he says that something is not right, and then it looks like he's fighting what could only be shadows. Anderson is then in what could only be a hospital, probably a physical therapy room with what looks like weight shelves and a treadmill and a wheelchair. In the room, she's actually going up against some sort of crazy six-armed scary lady, but then back to another cultist with a green raincoat and a Deerfest mask. It cuts to Anderson fighting what actually looks like Nightingale that has been resurrected. And as the trailer ends, it fades to Anderson in the mountains of Bright Falls, bending down and asking someone what their name is. We then see Wake, a very scruffy and very dirty Wake, peering back at her. The trailer then ends, cutting to the Alan Wake 2 title. There is a good amount of details in this trailer, being able to break down that the cultists could be ran by Scratch in an attempt to mess with the FBI, and Wake, making them think it was Wake all along with Nightingale probably returning to be an even larger antagonist than before. We also see Wake in New York, the Cauldron Lake cabin, back in Bright Falls, so I would assume we will see his full escape from the dark place in this game, and he won't just appear back in Bright Falls from the start of the game. Though I also will say that this trailer is even smaller than the next one, and I found most of the hidden details within the next, that being the dark place gameplay reveal. So getting right into the next and last trailer I want to talk about today, it opens up in New York. First thing we see is the camera looking at a brick wall. Around and around is seen as the focus of the shot, but around that you can also see some other choice words. We hear Wake say, "in a horror story," and then the scene cuts to the dark and deserted night streets of New York. We can see a Night Spring sign in the distance when Wake continues, "There are only victims and monsters." The scene then cuts to a bunch of CRTs in a department store window, the TVs displaying Wake's face as he continues to speak. Though I feel like this is a distraction as the main focus should be the movie posters found to the right of the TVs. From the top to the bottom of the posters, we see endings at the top, followed by based on the novels by Alan Wake. Under that reads the word final, but I can't make out the text that follows that as it is slightly too blurry. Let me know what you make out in the comments down below. Further down though, we see a dark place presentation, then a title which is called Nightless Nights. The next thing is really interesting to me as it says a Thomas Zane film, which could be misheard as Thomas Zane. Now in Control, Zane says he's an amateur filmmaker, along with Jesse's psychiatrist saying Zane was not a poet but a filmmaker. Maybe referring to the fact that the psychiatrist meant sane. Who knows on that one though? Zane could be sane, as Zane wrote himself out of reality, maybe writing himself back in as a different person and a filmmaker. The rest of the poster though is just names that I can't make out, but I would assume are either not important or even developers and the writers of the game. But this poster seems to be covering another poster that actually looks like it could be the Alex Casey noir poster from American Nightmare, even having an Alex Casey film written at the bottom. But back to the TVs, they cut to Wake in the Cauldron Lake cabin, though I think there's a good chance it is Scratch if you look at his outfit along with his behavior. Wake can then be seen typing frantically when another Wake busts into the room, pointing a revolver at the other. I can't say who's who though, as there's Wake, Scratch, and Zane that they could all be. Along with this, on the door behind the Wake that busts in, displays the same spiral as the door in the Ocean View Motel that Wake is found behind in Control. We then have a montage of short clips, first being an ad for Coffee World, with a man standing holding a Coffee World mug and what looks like an Oh Dear Diner thermos. Then we see Wake on the set of In Between with Mr. Door, his hands raised and a scared expression on his face. Another cut leads us to Mr. Door standing in a skyscraper, New York seen behind him. Though I'm going to be honest, he looks a lot more like Hatch from Quantum Break, but we can only assume that this is just good old Door. Then we see a cultist in the iconic green raincoat and the Deerfest mask. The clip montage ends and we see Wake in the back room of the talk show, In Between with Mr. Door. He's watching a CRT as it displays himself on the set of the show with Mr. Door introducing him. Suddenly Wake appears on set, walking onto the stage in a fit of confusion. Mr. Door sits him down announcing Wake's new book, The Initiation. Interestingly too, both Wake and Door have Oh Dear Diner mugs in front of them. Now, as Door gets into Wake's new book is when things start to get weird. He explains that Initiation is about a fictional writer named Alan Wake who is trapped and has to write his way to freedom. And as Door describes what pretty much sounds like the events of the first game, the scene then cuts to Wake in a room made out of TVs. This actually reminds me of the Alan Wake DLCs, what Scratch would twist and turn Wake's reality through the TVs. But we then see Wake interacting with a film projector, somehow transporting him into the film that the projector displayed. Cut to another short clip montage, starting with who I would only assume is Scratch on the phone again, which makes me think of when we saw Wake on the phone earlier. He could be speaking with Scratch, but we'll see there. It then cuts to someone with Scratch pointing a handheld camera at him, and then we see a typewriter on the bed with someone typing frantically on it. Could this be Wake writing the events to combat Scratch? Or could the person filming Scratch actually be filming Wake, holding him hostage to write? Who knows? But the scene shifts to Anderson, Casey, and Wake in a room together. Wake now actually wearing his American Nightmare outfit. Anderson asks Wake if he is the one who wrote the pages, but Wake says that he's trying to remember and just can't. Cut back to Wake in New York as Casey runs up and confronts him, Wake looking like he actually might know Casey and is probably confused as Casey is someone Wake created. Then we see the return manuscript, Wake holding it in his hands, seeming like he does not remember it. The scene changes again to Wake in a red room struggling to break through a door as what I would only call darkness chases him down. Wake, or someone else I guess, begins then scratching out the Alan Wake of the return title page, making me think, could that be Scratch, or is Wake signifying that he's not the one that wrote Return? Then a quick cut to Wake covered in either dirt or blood, screaming at the camera, then Wake yelling and holding his head, wearing that American Nightmare outfit once more. We then hear Anderson investigating, seeing a ghost Wake behind her as she says, "Wake has a double?" As it hits her, she could be realizing about Scratch or Zane. Then it goes back to Wake in what looks like a courthouse, or maybe a train station, or maybe even the oldest house. The room then changes, manuscript pages everywhere, a podium in the middle of the room, red lights everywhere, and pyramids similar to what we see in Control. We then see a montage of Anderson and Wake fighting some new enemies before it cuts to Wake in a subway. In front of Wake is a wall engulfed in darkness. Above that wall is a sign reading, "Don't sleep again." On the wall we can see Scratch and "You Lost," along with those same pyramids. Wake is holding that Disneyland wand we saw in earlier trailers as he holds it up and light bursts out of it, changing the environment around him. Wake is still standing in the same spot of the subway, though it is fully lit now and the wall in front of him has turned to gates. The sign that read "Don't sleep again" now reads "Stop riding Wake." This obviously shows that the New York we see is most likely not New York and still a part of the Dark Place. With this though, it makes me think of something that I mentioned in the Remedy Connection video, being that Wake could possibly be in New York due to an Alex Casey film or book. The projectors, along with the film poster we see earlier in the trailer, could also back that up. After this though, the scene cuts to Wake in a theater, with the person overlay that we see in Control as someone is talking to the character, as we then hear Wake say what sounds like, "I don't want to be in the story, just take me out of the story." Next, it cuts to a CRT sitting in the middle of a dark room, as the camera slowly zooms in on it. The TV shows us Wake, or maybe even Scratch, going absolutely crazy, still stuck in the Cauldron Lake cabin. Things shift back to Wake, now in what looks like a train or subway tunnel, red lights surrounding him. In front of him sits that same podium from earlier, along with racks holding hundreds of manuscript pages. The pages start slowly floating into the sky as the ground starts to shake. The screen begins to distort as the pages fly towards Wake and the screen cuts out and we see that Alan Wake 2 title. And the trailer ends. Now this trailer shows a lot more in my opinion, connecting things to the past games along with Control a lot more than the other two trailers did. Along with that, this is the last trailer we have gotten, and with the actual game releasing next Friday, this will probably be the last trailer in general. Honestly though, those are the 3 trailers I wanted to focus on in this video. Yes, I know we've gotten first looks into the gameplay along with a few people releasing their thoughts already, though anything I could have pulled from those sources would be something from the game itself rather than the actual trailers, if that's not too confusing to understand. And I know, I have been talking about Alan Wake a lot the past couple of weeks, but honestly, I am just so excited for Alan Wake 2, and if you've been here a while, then you would know that I absolutely loved Alan Wake 1. And from these trailers, we can make out a lot of what is going on, along with some other promotionals that Remedy seems to be doing, as they have done before, especially with the Scratch American Nightmare trailers. And with this being my last Alan Wake 2 video before we actually get to the real game, I will say that I cannot wait for the next entry to this absolutely awesome, yet confusing series. And I hope these amazing trailers are not all hype in the end of the day. Though, as I always say when it comes to videos like this, who knows, and we will just have to wait and see when the game drops. But with the end of the trailers, I have to say that this video has just about run its course. So if you liked this video and are excited to see what Alan Wake 2 has to offer, let me know what you're thinking in the comments now. Along with that, don't forget to hit this video with a like, and if you want to see more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button now. As always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to support more like it, along with getting your name at the end of every single video, check out a membership to either my YouTube or my Patreon now. Don't feel pressured though, as if you're here doing what you already do, that is plenty. Lastly, if you heard any music in this video that you found yourself enjoying, go ahead and check out BillyTheWhip.com or just Billy the Whip on any music platform now to find something new to bob your head to. And now that we're here, thank you all so much for everything you great people do. I hope you return for my first look at Alan Wake 2 when it drops, and as always, I hope you all have an outstanding day.
Eyes glowing like a Ronin, tossing out checks I'm overthrowing. It lasts forever, my spit ongoing. Old tracks, I'm loathing new tracks. Start scrolling, no trolling like bowling, knocking down.